Nice.
If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property XPerts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy. Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Property XPerts Podcast. I am back this week off of my sunny jollies over in Dubai, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But if you don't tune in regularly, we are two serial entrepreneurs in the property industry space. We run construction-related businesses, property development, property investment, architecture, surveying, and we've got various sort of property portfolios under our belt. So you're in for a banger this week. We've got lots of value to be added. Oh, Ricky P, straight out of the gate. I don't know why you tune in every week, Ricky, and comment. You must get some value from it. So hopefully this one's no different. But on the agenda today, it is the 13th of February. We're going to be diving into some huge amounts of value add one-to-one consultancies that we've had this week. And they are massive value. We've added amongst everything that we've discussed with our mentees, probably millions of pounds of either value add or savings over the last couple of years. So find out more about what our one-to-one consultancy looks like. We've both been away. So Jack's been skiing, I've been in Dubai. So we're going to be going through a little bit around holidays and how to balance that with work. I've been on the Business of Architecture podcast after a 3-year hiatus. So find out what all that's about. Jack's going to be running through some structural stuff that he's been going through beyond building control and the issues and solutions that he's found with that. I've been at the Old Maltings today, so I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of where that project is at. We've got some finance stuff to talk through. So starting with refinancing and breaking down how that process can work for you, and some top tips that Jack's going to be sharing. We had the Property Development Summit last weekend, which is one of Brendan Quinn's event. And obviously always very, very well attended event. So lots of good takeaways from that. And then a little bit of a deeper dive into profit and loss, balance sheets, forecasting, and the importance of it to grow your business. And we've got, as always, some special discounts for you on some of the software that we use to balance our books. And as always, a Q&A session, and the Q&A session is quite long this week. There's quite a lot of questions that you guys have been throwing in. So thank you very much for that. And we're going to be answering all of those as we go. As we go through this, if you do have comments and questions, whether you're listening in live, so we are live every Friday. This is 4:30 on Friday on the 13th of February. We are live this week. Get your questions in as we go. But if you do have a question as this progresses, you don't have to be live to answer a question. So ask a question, whatever stage you're at, whatever platform you're listening on, and we will answer it. So get your comments on down below. If you don't tune into us regularly, we deliver, our aim under XP Property, our development business, is to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion in property in the UK. And we do that collaborating with trusted investors. We are ambitious, transparent and creative. And it took a while to get to those 3 words after asking a lot of our stakeholders, our team and our acquaintances. And we think that best suits both Jack and I and our business's credentials. We've got some open opportunities for investment. We can't do what we do without working with investment partners that want to invest in UK real estate. That ranges from £200,000 investments all the way up to £5 million investments and anywhere in between. I had a great conversation literally about an hour ago with a Canadian person with a Swiss client that wants to deploy between £5 and £7 million in the UK property market. That is something that we can absolutely help with. So if you know people like that, that want to deploy capital into the UK market, we would love to have a conversation. So make sure you pass our details on and we will reach out and have a conversation with those people. Cool. So jumping straight into the massive value add that we can add in our consultancy services. So we have been offering this for a couple of years now. We have a lot of repeat customers, mentees come back for some ad hoc support on various things. One of our friends, acquaintances, mentees messaged us on WhatsApp with a specific problem around a 9-bed HMO that he's looking to jump into. And he said he had a tender return that was £50,000 more than what he'd budgeted for. And I said, look, I can talk to you on WhatsApp back and forth, but booking in an hour session with me will be far greater value for you. So this is probably the 5th or 6th one-to-one conversation that we've had. I've put up on screen one of the previous responses from the one-to-one that we had last time. And just to summarize it, I said, I think I probably saved him 10 grand in that conversation. But he said he actually thinks more realistically, he would have lost 2 months or more by not having all of his ducks in a row from our discussion. He wouldn't have instructed his warranty provider in good time, which would have delayed things and potentially caused some retrofitting and retro sign-off kind of problems. And the contacts that we've shared with him has probably saved him time and a little fortune through not working with useless, begins with C word, I blanked it out. But ultimately, we've helped him validate his tracker and numbers. The value of your one-to-one is crazy unreal. I'm totally grateful for you two making it affordable to tap into your vast experience, you effing legends. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And Mac runs his own podcast now, so if you want to tune into the Zen podcast, we've just done some recordings with him, so those will be released soon. But Matt came to us with this 9-bed HMO. I said, I think I could probably add significant amounts of value to you. Let's jump on a call. So we ran through his scheme. He sent it, previous to the session. I had a quick look. We were meant to be talking about the spec of works and the tender returns. And that was the key problem that we had. But because we have so much experience through the whole process, and obviously my background from a design perspective, I'm not going to just take his floor plans, take his tender, and not suggest possible ways of improving his layouts and getting extra value. So through that process, I feel like we talked through his wants and needs. I looked at some of the issues that he has with his layouts. One being that in an efficient stairwell perspective, you would run staircases back above itself so that it's as efficient as it possibly can be. He had a stair going up to the second floor that was basically sort of horizontal to the main stair core, wasting space at first floor, creating lobbies and hallways at top floor, and sort of really, really detrimental to the space up in the loft that he could have. So I suggested taking the staircase back over itself, having 2 new bedrooms left and right as you get into the second floor. And that alone is huge amounts of value, let alone some of the other suggestions that I made in terms of creating some wardrobe spaces and increasing sizes of bedrooms in certain areas. There's also things like, from a technical perspective, that I can pick up on from a fire perspective, where I think I've probably saved, and we valued those value add design changes. And when you added in the extra rental, i.e. the 25 quid, 50 quid, 70 quid, 100 quid extra that he'd get for the rooms in terms of the new design that we've come up with, the value add to that asset based on the small tweaks in design changes that we talked about is £26,000, 250 quid from a £300 one-to-one consultation. There's also, I reckon, £10,000 of heartache with the future problems that he could have found future down the line by not understanding or getting the correct fire strategy in place, having a kitchen hob that's too close to the kitchen entrance, i.e., not enough room for means of escape. So a hob needs to be sort of 1.8 meters from an escape route. All of these things that weren't picked up, that will be picked up at a later date, and there will probably be some retrofitting that would need to be done to change things on site, which obviously costs a shitload of money. So that's £36,000 worth of value add in an area that he didn't even ask me to talk about. The actual build cost savings and running through his tender returns, I think we came to somewhere around £20,000 of potential savings by challenging a few things, tweaking the specification, or point blankly saying to him, look, do you really need this specification for this level of property? And ultimately, there was £2,000-3,000 of, let's just strike it off, just don't do it. It's not going to add value to your HMO, so get rid of it. And this is the value that we want to bring to you guys. It's been 300 quid for a long time. We are putting that up. So if you do want to book in some ad hoc consultancy where you've got specific problems that you want to resolve, you want to lean on our expertise, our guidance, then yeah, get that booked in very quickly, because we are going to be increasing those prices in the next couple of months. But yeah, this was just sort of a case study. I'm going to ask Mac to do a video testimonial for us. We're going to talk through some of these things that we pick up on in these consultations. And this is from a design and a costing perspective. Jack, when he jumps onto consultations with his mentees, we'll be often talking about funding structures, saving a shitload of money on interest payments by negotiating ins and outs and arrangement fees, and getting the best rates and giving access to some of our brokers and all that good stuff. So throughout the whole development lifecycle process, throughout any real business, if you've got even not a property development business, but you're running a service-based business and you want some insight from people who have gone through the past 8 years of growing businesses and can add significant amounts of value, then yeah, reach out.
Very good.
Oh, this for those that are visually seeing this, these arrows indicate that pricing is going up very soon. Put those on about 2 minutes ago. We're also increasing entries to our boardroom over the next year. So we are packaging that up slightly differently. You'll start to see some adverts follow you around Instagram and Facebook, no doubt, very soon. But we want to fill that room and probably another one. So we've probably got a good 20 spots to fill. This is a chance for you to get in a room with lots of other investors and developers, led by Jack and I, where there's huge amounts of value added with deal clinics, business hot seat coaching, and essentially a community of other successful investors and developers who want to grow and scale their businesses. So if you're interested in joining the boardroom, comment boardroom below or reach out to us.
Hello, out of office. So Ben was away and as was I. I got back this week for my second ski trip, and I thought it would be good to touch on holidays and work-life balance. And there's a few points that I think are relative for any entrepreneur, business owner, or even someone that's in employment and trying to build a bit of a side hustle, in terms of how you can essentially get away and try and enjoy your time. I also typically get challenged to do this, as my wife's from California. When I travel over there, I'm 8 hours behind, which is really challenging to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the UK is at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and you feel like you're always chasing your tail. It was actually really nice when I was in Dubai last, because I think the time difference was 3 or 4 hours, but you're ahead, so you can you feel like you're on the front foot. But I was on a ski trip, so I was occupied for a lot of the daytime. It was nice being an hour ahead. But the reason I thought this would be good to share in here is to allow people to have a think about how you can manage and plan best to go away. So first point is high value and low value tasks. I'm a big advocate of working while you're away if you need to, if you're not necessarily going to be massively growing the business, but equally don't completely shut off. And that may be for some, and I'll come on to that later. But I like to hopefully encounter all of the high value tasks. So signing documents that need signing, agreeing a deal, closing something off, arranging a finance structure. When it comes to that big sales driven growth, big decisions, that's a high value task. Low value tasks will be more ops led. So it might be making sure something gets to the post office, or dealing with some logistics in the business. That shouldn't really fall on you, and your team should hopefully feel like, I won't bother Jack with that because he's away and we can actually deal with it. So focusing time on HVT versus LVT, that's actually a really good exercise to do even when you're not away. But when you are away, I think it's heightened to make sure you're not wasting time on low value tasks, and think to yourself, can this wait? And often if my answer is no, I'll get on with it. If it's yes, I will then put a note in my diary to deal with that as and when it needs to be dealt with. Next point is, for me and my mental sanity, I like to box things off. So I'm not a massive, the sort of next one is feet up. So are you one of those people that just likes to basically cut ties, cut emotion, cut thoughts, and just completely go into Zen mode? Or are you one that likes to box things off, then enjoy yourself because you know that there's nothing whirling around or things to be thought about, and considerations that need to be met? So that is, I'm definitely a boxer offer. I know that Stuart, who I do the ground up with, is a feet up guy. He just ignores his phone, deletes everything, and tries to enjoy himself. And that's kind of over to who you are and how you want to manage your time away. For me, we have Ben and I share a personal assistant, and I like 2-part updates. So an update just before lunch, and then an update before close of business. And then I know if there's anything that I need to step in and action as a high value task, or feedback on the points that I need to feed back on. The summaries are quite cool. So Heather would literally send a summary of like key points that may need action, and then just an FYI of things that you might just need to see or know or be aware of. And those 2-part updates are really useful because it means I can just get out, enjoy, a morning of skiing. So when I stop for lunch, I know the main things that have come in an email. Where we're kind of missing a bit of a grey spot here is a lot of my work comes through WhatsApps, and she doesn't have access to my WhatsApps. So as well as she can manage my emails, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing on my WhatsApps, which is fine to be fair, because when I'm on a chairlift, I can just monitor those things anyway. I'm a big advocate for snoozing emails. So if you get an email in, I don't just want it sitting and clogging my inbox and making it feel like it's overwhelming and there's loads of stuff going in there. So if it's not an urgent thing and it's something that can be dealt with, so for an example, I got an email while I was away saying that my insurance renewal for a property is coming up in 3 weeks. I right click, and you can do this on Gmail, and I delay it till the day after I'm back. That enables me to then tackle a bit of an onslaught of email inboxes when I'm at my desk and when I can crack through it quickly, or even in evenings at weekends. And I know that it's just going to clog up my inbox to try and prioritize foresight on those high value tasks. Next point is actually quite a good exercise if you have a team to go away, because they may actually be quite reliant on you for many things. And it's actually only when someone isn't there to help you, you actually learn. So sometimes it's a good process to actually let the team crack on. And a good example of this is when I used to be a site manager when I was 21 years old. I was working on site with quite a senior site manager, and if he would see tradies walking towards the site office, he would sometimes hide. And the reason being is those tradies might come and be like, well, the plumber's in my way, I can't get on with this. But if you're not there, they just turn around and get on with it. So sometimes you can be the scapegoat for a question, a remark, a query. And sometimes it's good for you to just pull yourself out. And it's that building that business without you, where you generate value. So sometimes it's good to let the team figure it out, and also ask the question. If you get asked the question, go, well, what do you think? And allowing them to figure it out. And then last but not least, from my points, and I'll let Ben come on to his sort of points and tactics of overcoming working while you're out of office. Not one size fits all. So I went away with a guy who runs a successful recruitment company. It's extremely lean. It's mainly built around him. He is the value in the business, and he wasn't needed a lot in his business, to say the least. And he's running a completely different type of beast. He has a different way of dealing with how he works, when he's away, and not one size fits everyone. So with all these points, they're just considerations for you to think about to try and enable you to step away from time. So, maybe save this episode or make a note of this episode number, and next time you're going away, have a think about how you can efficiently be away and still manage the important things, to keep the ball rolling and keep I would much rather spend half an hour on the phone with a team member if it's then going to save the business a day or 2 days, or it's a really important thing that needs pushing forwards. But if it's something that can wait, I'd rather let it wait. So just to go through that process of how it's going to work, the formalities of it, I think are a really useful process to go through and test being out of the business. Any to add, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think my holidays have definitely changed with two little kids. So it's way more difficult now to get good sessions of work that I might have used to have done. I think I always used to use holidays as a time to focus on some of the business growth stuff. I can't just sort of lie down on a sunbed and just completely switch off. But I like to use those times to think about strategy with businesses and marketing channels. And I come back generally with really good ideas to kind of move the business forward, and tweaks and improvements that I need to make across the sort of various departments. So that I find really useful when you go on holidays. Having an EA PA is great to, like Jack says, kind of summarize some of the things that have been happening. So I'll get generally 2 summary WhatsApps every day in terms of email income. So email inbox sort of cleaning up. So Heather will basically sort of summarize the key things that happened, urgent attention, just for my information. I followed up, Heather's followed up for me, and that works really well for me. Again, like Jack says, kind of one size doesn't really fit all. It's up to you how you find it works for you. Hopefully some of these tips you can take away and use for yourself, but there'll be other ones where you're like, that doesn't really work for me. The way that Jack manages his time and his inbox is actually really different to how I manage mine, and Heather has to kind of understand how to work with both of us, which comes with its challenges. But nothing much more to say really. I think it's challenging, especially if you do have kids and you have other responsibilities. It becomes even more difficult. Dubai for me was from day one a mix of business and family, and that is the first time that I've done that. So I had 2 days of business in between the 6 days that we were out there. So first 2 days were family, then 2 days of business, then 2 days of family. I was knackered during my business days, to be honest, like darting around, like trying to be switched on, back to back in meetings, went to a prop tech event. So it was actually really, really knackering. And then when you have a sick child overnight that's coughing and spluttering next to you, I genuinely threw a pillow at Lucas one night to sort of try to get him to shut up and stop coughing. And then Teddy was vomiting the next night. So it was just, it was quite full on. And you'll find that when you have kids, it doesn't always work out as you'd really hope. But hopefully there's some useful tips there. Cool. So this week, the launch of the second time that I've been on the Business of Architecture podcast was thrown out. And I think I recorded this about 6 months ago, but they got such a backlog of podcasts that it was programmed in for the first week of Feb. My first one was back in 3 years ago now by looks of things, and it's still one of the most sort of listened to videos on their YouTube channel, which is great. And that was all about the various different businesses that we run, creating that multiple streams of revenue through the ecosystem of businesses that we do run. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, then go to see episode 177 on the Business of Architecture podcast. And then this one was more about the development stuff. So the sort of architect turned kind of developer type scenario. There's a lot of architects out there that see development as their shining light and what they want to aim for, and they want to jump ship and be in complete control of their own destiny and their own developments, make their own design choices. And this was a very frank conversation around kind of the risks around that and what you're getting into with property development, and how difficult it is to run a development business. But what we also touch on, which is something that I'm seeing loads more of nowadays, is around how sort of technicians, and what I mean by technicians, it's architects, engineers, party wall surveyors, anyone with a technical background where they are used to doing they are very technically gifted and very good at what they do, but they're stuck in their own way when it comes to business. They jump ship from a larger architectural practice, for example, and they think, I can do this. I'm going to set up my own business. I'm good at architecture. I'm going to make this work. And 5 years down the line, there's still only 3 people in the business. They're still stuck on the drawing board, doing the day-to-day and doing the actual work. And they haven't learned the fundamental skills of business to grow into what James Sinclair will always say, a profitable enterprise that will work without you. And that's ultimately what the game is with business. So if you want to understand, if you are an architect, an engineer, anyone with a technical background, and want to learn about kind of how we've managed to kind of separate ourselves from the day-to-day and grow businesses, then this is definitely a really good episode to watch. It's episode 672 of the Business of Architecture podcast. I think there's a new feature on YouTube, which we've now figured out, where actually, just like you can collaborate on Instagram with posts, you can now collaborate with YouTube videos. So if you actually go to our YouTube channel, which is the Property Experts Show with Ben and Jack, you will find this link or this episode on our YouTube channel as well now somewhere. I don't know where it will be, but it'll be somewhere. So yeah, if you're interested in that, if you are a business owner, you're either wanting to start your own business in a technical service-based business space, or you have done that and you've made the leap, but you're struggling to grow and build a team and relinquish yourself from that business, then this is a really good episode for you.
Cool. This was mine, and the project that you can actually see on screen is not the project that this has come to light on again, but a different project. But essentially, when we do a conversion, a refurbishment in Central Suites, we often have to get a structural engineer involved. And with that structural engineer, they're basically commenting on what we need to. A lot of the buildings that we do are listed or got problems or structural problems, or might not even be mortgageable. And I found that you first get your building control underway, and get that assigned so that you've got a building control, whether it's private or council, lined up. You would then typically need a structural engineer to remediate the particular problem in hand. And you'll go through the project, you'll do everything to the structural engineer's design plans, building control then sign everything off from their perspective. But I've often found there's a grey sort of area where you finish the project, the structural engineer hasn't done anything since the original design plans. They haven't monitored it, they haven't approved it, they haven't even sent, they haven't even had a communication sometimes with building control. And I just feel like really uneasy that that's it, because at the end of the day, the building control are not going to take responsibility for the structural repairs or remediation that you've actually delivered on the project. They try and push that onto other consultants. So what we've done this for a few years now. What we typically do is get the structural engineer to also monitor progress of works, and we'll send them photos and evidence of it being delivered as per the plans. We will then also request that they do a final inspection, and we will then also request, and we'll pay them for this, they do a letterheaded confirmation that the works have been carried out in accordance with their plans, and they've carried out the final inspection. Now, we were doing this to kind of wipe our arse, but I'll give you an example of where it really saved our arse. So this particular asset was a building that had basically like a buckling wall. We had to repair it. What you can actually see if you're if you're on YouTube, is we had to build a buttress wall that was dry packed and then supported the whole building with steels. And we literally got to the point of refinance, the day of refinance, and the lender's lawyer said, "Have you got confirmation that this has now been structurally delivered?" And fortunately, I had this letter, sent it to the lender's lawyer, and that day we refinanced. If I hadn't had that, I would then have to tell the lender to send the funds back to the lender. I would then have to get the structural engineer back out to do a final inspection and to walk them through all the photos. I would then have to wait for them to letterhead a confirmation document to confirm that. And then we would then be a week behind to then refinance again. So that 3-week saving grace made it so worthwhile. And I would highly recommend you do this as a covering your ass that document might help you get insurance. It might get the funding over the line. It might help to sell it. You never know what you might need that document for, but get it while it's hot, get it while the project's been delivered. And it's really worth its weight in gold. And realistically, I'm amazed that structural engineers don't have to do that as part of a full scope of works. Like, they don't have to come and have a look. They don't have to come and sign it off. It's kind of left in between them and building control. Building control are there monthly, but they're not. So yeah, that was just a learning, actually a bit of a win, because we kind of thought ahead, but a bit of a win that we think was a good way about things. And obviously, if you're in a massive construction site, structural engineering might be out more than if it's just a little light refurb that requires a couple of steels or some small remediation plans. So that's where I think the gap falls.
Sweet. Top tip. Cool. So yeah, I was on site this morning. I've been to 2 sites this morning, the Old Maltings and St Andrew's Court in Tame. Between both of those, we are delivering 43 flats and houses and 6,500 square feet of commercial space. So 2 of our biggest sites, combined GDV of over 15 million quid. So decent sized projects, big contracts, lots of work, and they are now sort of trundling along. So we have had a few issues with our electrical connections, which have now largely been resolved, which is amazing. So great to see that kind of kicking forward. The meeting this morning was with the one of our contractors who will be digging the trenches for all of the new utilities. So we're just getting that lined up. We've got the gas installations happening at the beginning of March, and everything will then get connected up shortly thereafter. So it will be great to get the site kind of fully energized, fully up and running, so that we can get everything commissioned and ready for building control sign off. The picture on the right hand side shows a lot of green stuff, which is good. Green means good, by the way. So ultimately this is sort of partial handovers. So you can see on that list, there's basically the best part of 15 that are sort of fully sort of ready for handover, a couple more that are just in sort of final stroke clean, and then we've got our front extension works, which is the bit that's was additional value add through the planning process that we're waiting on a couple of steels to go in next week, and then we can crack on with the roof on that. And the townhouses that you can see where I'm pointing on the screen, these two new townhouses were new builds that we achieved at planning approval stage, and that is up to the 2nd floor lift level now. So they've just brought the new scaffold up to the next lift, ready to get the brickwork on, and steelwork will go in next week for the roof to go on. So within sort of 2-3 weeks, we should see that the form of that property completed, and then not long after get it watertight. And it's rained every single day, I think, in 2026 so far. So it's been a bit of a slow burn on that one. With we don't have a top hat on that because I don't think we really needed it at the time, but it has been raining a lot, so it's caused us a few delays. But yeah, good to see that all moving forward. We've got a solid kind of plan now to get that external work completed. So you can see all of these garden brick walls. We've got some walls where we've got some gas meters going on. We're fabricating the balustrades and the balconies to add to this side facade. And yeah, things are progressing. So
before we move on, got a question that's relative to this.
Okay, cool.
So from I don't know what I'm saying. Andrew Pichugog. What's your guys' build cost per square foot on St Andrew's Court and the Old Maltings?
Yeah, great question. And please don't listen to this, take it away and think, that's what I can build at, because there are too many variables on every project to just take a standard square footage onto your project. Just to look at the contrast, the Old Maltings is an 1880s building originally. Luckily, there was a lot of structural work that happened before we bought it, so it hasn't been too bad. But there's huge amounts of structural work that will be going or has gone into the Old Maltings to get to where it is. And on St Andrew's Court, it's a 1980s office block where we have big open spans already. It's a solid masonry cavity wall construction externally, PC concrete slabs, spine wall down the middle of the existing offices, so far easier to convert. It's a fit out more so. Yes, we've created a few openings in the external perimeter with lintels, new windows, stuff like that, but fundamentally the internal works are far easier than the Old Maltings. That being said, from memory, and I don't have these completely off the top of my head, but we are converting the Old Maltings at something like £170 a square foot, and the St Andrew's Court is around about 150, 155 last time I checked. So hopefully that's at least useful to give you a bit of insight. But fundamentally, we've got new build townhouses in the Old Maltings that are costing us about 200 and where did we end up on that? 240 a square foot, I believe. And then the front extension is just not even worth looking at on a pound per square foot rate, because there's just so much complication with it in terms of lifting off the old roof, removing front canopies, rebuilding a whole facade, installing 2 new floors. It's just, it can't be done on a pound per square foot rate. There's too much complication to it. So, but hopefully that was useful for you. Cool. Refinance.
Well, it should be a fairly quick one. So one of our brokers, shout out to Merry Oaks, who do our debt lending in Central Seats and actually in XP Property. We have, I think it's 9 refinances on the go at any point. In the last couple of months with them. And when you're in email threads and when you're trying to see head nor tail between what you're trying to reply to and, essentially understand of where everything's at, it sometimes gets quite complicated. So I have all the case managers in a WhatsApp group, all of the team members in a WhatsApp group that need to see relevant documents and finance details that are going through. And what we actually do is we just actually request a sometimes daily update if it's really that active, or at least a weekly update, so that we know we're on top of things and everything's pushing forward. If your broker or your firm of brokerages that you're working with aren't prepared to do that, how do you know what's waiting on you, what's waiting on them, what needs chasing up? And a lot of this refinancing, it takes forever, especially if you're not that efficient. And I'm fairly confident by next Friday, we will have a refinance done 3.5 weeks after the valuation and the offer was released. And it's just about keeping the speed and the pace on it. We've had some that take forever, and sometimes you just can't see. It feels like you're walking through treacle, but just a little tip that there's ways that you can do it. I can't remember what episode it is, and I'll try and dig it out maybe for the next session next week, which is we also have a legals tracker, which is a document. If we've got a lot going on at any given time with one law firm, we'll do the same. We'll say, where's this one at? And go through every single one. And we find that really beneficial to just round robin everything every week, just to keep on top of things, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's it really.
Nice. Cool. So Saturday, the 7th of February, was the Property Developer Summit for 2026. This is now, I don't know how many they've done, but there was a big break during sort of COVID, and then it didn't come back until 2025, I think. But they are probably one of the best kind of property day events that you should be attending throughout the year. It's run by Brendan Quinn, or a sponsor of the Central London Property Network, which has been run for now 15 years, I think, with Brendan. So yeah, huge attendance at that, some great content, some good panel discussions. And the National Development Summit is just the same. It's basically a full day of presentations, talks, panel discussions, fireside chats around the whole property industry and what's going on, as well as some other things that feed into that. So marketing, branding, all this sort of AI, all that sort of stuff that you still also need to understand as a property developer and property investor. Aura Architecture were there. We sponsored the event, as you can see from the screen. So had Graham, Molly, Michal, and Gabby there for the day, having conversations with property developers, just like you guys listening in. Or I want to be doing more work with property developers. That is really where I think we can add huge amounts of value to you in unlocking the potential of your scheme. So if you do have a feasibility or a project where you're not really sure what to do with it, or what the value add areas are, or you've already got an architect that's kind of done a design for you, where you'd want a second pair of eyes to see if there's any ways in which you can unlock value further. And I guarantee you, we will find ways that you can improve the layouts, optimize your gross development value, maybe save some costs. I mean, just like the consultancy session that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, just 1 hour session of somebody like myself or somebody from the Aura team looking at your scheme, they will de-risk it for you. They will add value, and they will find ways of optimizing the scheme for you. So would love to speak to more developers and work with you longer term. But the Development Summit is a great place to be. There are tickets already on offer. And Brendan will love me for saying this, but yeah, 2027, the venue is chosen. He's already selling exhibitor spots. He's already got a few people sign up for that off the back of the success of Saturdays. So yeah, if you're interested in exhibiting at his event, then also reach out to me and I can pass you on to Brendan. Yeah, anything else you want to say about
that? He's already booked in an amazing host as well,
which happens to be his truly,
yeah,
JJ.
Clark Kent,
JJ. Cool, good. Next, P&Ls.
I feel like we haven't talked about this in ages. Have we not?
We sort of touched on it briefly, like quite a lot, I would say, but not in like a great depth. So,
well, yeah, I was just more thinking about narrowing down, like without going into detail. Everyone knows what a profit and loss is. Hopefully, everyone knows what a balance sheet is and forecasting and work in progress. But I've been doing a lot of work on our central, specifically, like I feel like XP is all really up in order, but in Central Suite's zero accounts, like really getting everything. So if you're watching on the far right hand side of the screen, you can actually pull yourself reports on a business in zero, and it's super useful. And I feel like if you don't know, like for me, I don't mind if I lose money in a month as long as I know that there's either a strong work in progress forecasted to make a profit to some degree, and also the balance sheet props up the business. So I kind of feel like there's so many moving parts with understanding the health of a business, because if you lose money in 1 month, that doesn't mean you're not a profitable business. And understanding these 4 factors that I think are like the heart and soul of a property development, property investment business. And it's been, I kind of dive into it and almost go down into a little bit of a rabbit hole, if I'm honest, that I start tweaking things around, going back to the bookkeeper, being like, this is the wrong place, this needs to be moved here, because I want to see the clarity in the numbers. That's just how my mind works. I know a lot of people don't even follow sometimes that detailed of like a month to month P&L, balance sheet forecast, or work in progress. So I was just going to walk through the importance of them, how we use them, and why, if you're not using them and I think any business that's, doing over 50K a year needs to really be looking at all of these. A lot of people, I still know business owners that just know they've got more money in their bank account each month, and that's that, which is, a nice position to be in. But if you want to invest in growth, invest in staff. If you want to monitor the bits that are rattling in the business, you kind of need these 4 pillars. So starting off with P&L, which is really simple, which is your profit and loss each month. Some businesses, for example, XP Surveys, you may want to look at a P&L over a 3-month period, because you might have some big projects fall in different months to the cost associated to that particular project. So you can pull those reports. You can do quarterly reviews, annually reviews, and monthly reviews. I know some businesses even go to weekly reviews, which is can be common. So that is your P&L is obviously your revenues. That typically then boils down into your operating profit, which is not a cost associated to running the business. It's more that the cost that's above that borderline. So you're basically the cost of sales, which is a really important figure. Once you then take off the cost of everything in the business, not associated to particular projects, you will achieve your net profit. A thing that we like to do, because we're in property, is we like to get a rental statement monthly. So you can actually see on the bottom left there, where we've got all the rooms, all the flats that we might be letting, and we get a breakdown of what they're letting for. It easily enables, from a management accounts perspective, to look at, hang on a second, why is rent missed there, and what's the problem with that particular room? And we have quite a few rooms now and quite a few properties, so it enables you to give you the opportunity to try and spot things before they're too much of a problem. So looking through your P&L, we often actually also do breakdown asset P&L, because we want to see what assets are performing better than others, why they're performing better than others. Do we need to put some capex into those particular assets? Are they going to be the first ones that we invest in because they're not performing? Is it something to do with the room rates, the flat rates, or whatever it may be? Is the managing agent doing what they need to be doing? Is the occupancy where it needs to be doing? So it enables you to sort of see in real time any potential problems. Anything to add on P&L, Ben?
I think, I mean, you'll come onto it with the WIP, the work in progress.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, and I think you've covered most things there. I think with service-based businesses, it's always really important to also break down your sort of service provision. So making sure that we're looking at this in Aura now in terms of seeing how profitable the different departments of the business are, rather than just having a top line sort of revenue of the different sectors, and then having your cost of goods as a sort of general overview. It's actually looking at profitability of each part of our business. So are we actually profitable through the planning process, or are we more profitable during the detailed design process? And that's a great way of drilling down into the detail within the team in terms of, okay, why aren't we making as much money as we thought we should be during the concept design? What is our concept feasibility a loss leader to then win work for the later phases? If so, we need to figure out how to improve that. So yeah, breaking it down on the P&L is a good way of seeing which departments of your business, what parts of your business are profitable and not.
Good. Then moves us on to the balance sheet. So the balance sheet. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are losing £1,000 per month every month for 12 months, and it's the worst year in the world. But you've got an asset that the liability is worth £1 million, and the liability against that asset in the company is only £500,000. So technically, the company has a balance sheet of a net value of £500,000 minus obviously the profit that you've been losing. So when you look at that, you can look at your leverage points and your growth points. That sometimes a cash flowing business is not as strong on a balance sheet, but a balance sheet business is, an asset-based balance sheet business can be worse from a cash flow perspective. Super common with development companies, because typically you're not making a profit until the end. So you're technically burning costs all the way through, centralized, which then might not be associated in the WIP, which we'll come on to shortly. But it's really important to see. And the reason that that's important, for example, in Central Suites, is we sometimes borrow capital to buy a HMO. Now, to do that, we might be, looking at the asset we're buying, which is devalued at this moment in time. We're buying it for £300,000. We're going to spend £150,000 on it, and actually, until that is finished, that investment in the company won't be balanced out on the balance sheet because it's not a true value. But if we're bringing that in and we've actually got value in previous assets that we've done, we can see our debt to asset ratio on our balance sheet and get comfortable with movements and decisions that we're making in the business. So I'd highly recommend filling out your balance sheet as best you can. Your balance sheet is basically your business's assets minus its liabilities, and hopefully you have value and capital reserves in that, so that you can choose to how to grow and scale. And maybe if you aren't in a great position on your balance sheet, focus on cash flow first, to improve that element too. So now into, I'm actually going to do WIP first, then forecasts, because I think that's a better way around to do it. So WIP stands for work in progress. So if you're buying a project or you're developing a project and you're spending money on that particular project, so let's say you've got this £1 million property and you're developing it to 10 flats, and you're spending £100,000 per flat. That £100,000 or relative to the month that you're spending it isn't necessarily a cost of the business or a loss, because you're making capital investments against that asset that has a new value when it's finished. So if you have a P&L in a business, which is your profit and loss, which is your revenues, profits, and your costs in a business, it will get completely pushed off kilter if you're doing a development when you need to allocate those costs as work in progress, because those costs are specifically going across that project and that asset. And if you try and bring that into the P&L, you'll end up finding that a business that normally makes £2,000 a month, when you're spending £50,000 a month on construction, you're losing £48,000 per month, which then skews your P&L and means your P&L isn't useful. So P&L is really good in trading businesses and investment companies, in development companies and projects where you're spending a lot of capital throwing it at a contractor or developing an asset. We definitely recommend you split those out into work in progress. They then actually technically sit on your balance sheet as a work in progress cost as well, which is relative to say. Anything to add before I go on forecast?
No, all good.
Then last but not least is forecast. So without these three items, specifically P&L, I would say it's really difficult to picture forecasts in a business. We've recently just redone our sort of 16 month forecast in Central Suites. And what we do is we pull a report from zero of our costs in that segment of the business, whether it's accountancy fees, whether it's subsidence, whether it's postage, whether it's salaries. We draw an average over the last 12 months, and then we put that in as a running cost for our business. We then go through line by line on any that we know have reached a new value. So salary increases, for an example. If a salary goes up, it doesn't really ever go down. Well, I've never really actually heard of that unless someone takes a demotion. So you need to then update that particular line item. But if it's something like car fuel, you will have to draw an average, because if you don't draw an average, you're going to get an inconsistent figure. But if it's salaries, you're better off taking last month or the last 3 months. So once you've drawn those averages, you can then cast a cost of the business moving forwards. You then do the same with the revenues and incomes, and then that allows you to build a forecast. And the way that you should particularly do it is you should have your revenues along the top. You should then have your gross profit along that line item. So the cost of sales go against that revenue. So a cost of sale is a cost that is associated with that revenue, that project, that specific survey, that specific house, whatever it may be. So you're now dialing down into your gross profit. Most businesses try and operate around 50% gross profit. As a bit of an example, obviously that varies. If you're in tech, you might be at a much higher margin gig. If you're in FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods, as food, you might be on a much smaller lower margin because you're looking at volume. But once you've got that in play, you then have your fixed costs, which are your overheads, which then draws down your net profit, which hopefully you are making one. And don't worry if it's not consistently monthly, but again, every business is different. And all of these reports that I've discussed, other than, I mean, there are some plugins that you can do for forecasts with Xero, but all of these are available to be produced as a report if your bookkeeping's up to scratch on Xero. We do have a special offer coming up after this slide on Xero. We've actually had quite a few people take us up on this, which is really good. So a little, for some reason it's not loading, I don't think. There you go. Get 90% off your first 6 months. And I think it's zero contract to tie then. You can leave after 6 months as well, can't you? I believe. So the bit.ly link is there. If you're listening on audio, go over to YouTube and check it out. We also use Dext for our bookkeeping and filing, Dext, D-E-X-T, and we can get you 15% off your first 12 months. Link in the description.
Yeah, link down below. Just going back to Lalit Vuturi has asked earlier in the session, hey guys, is XP Property Development Mastermind with Tyler Newman resuming? Probably worth me just touching on this very quickly. I met Tyler over in Dubai last week. He's moved over there to set up a new agency, which is super exciting for him. The mastermind, as it stood kind of earlier this year, is not going to be progressing in its same form, but you will start to see over the next couple of weeks other ways in which you can take advantage of kind of Jack and I's knowledge and experience in a more sort of formal setting. So, we've got our one-to-one consultancy, and we've got our boardrooms, which are slightly different structure, and we've got some other educational sort of routes that will be of interest to you coming up. But the Tyler and the XP kind of property ed collaboration is going to change form basically. So stay tuned over the next couple of weeks, but we will get a proper sort of message out to everyone, because I know that there's been a few people reaching out to say, what's going on. And I think fundamentally we need to get a consolidated kind of message out to everyone so that everyone's clear of how things are going to progress going forward. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Cool. If you listen to these podcasts on a weekly basis, thank you very much. But if you haven't clicked that like button, do it now. If you haven't rated us on Spotify, reviewed us on Apple Podcast, then please do, because it helps the algorithm know that you're getting value. And we know you do because you tell us you do. And we would love you to just share it with one person that you think would get value from this, who want to grow or scale a property development business, want to set up or grow their businesses. I'm sure there'll be golden nuggets that Jack and I talk about on a weekly basis that will help them do that. So please do share it. Cool. On to some questions now. Actually, an apology from last week. If you tuned into last week's episode, you'd have got to the 40-minute mark and wondered where Jack had gone. Unfortunately, his audio patched out and we lost the last sort of half an hour of all the really valuable stuff that he was talking about. So he's going to have to do it again. Yeah,
which I will. Pain in the ass. I just literally got another phone call then. I thought to myself, this is what happened last time my AirPods jumped. I was in a luxury hotel that time. But yeah, should we get cracking with the questions? I actually have already answered them. So shall I do the first few? And there's one about...
you go for them all. Go for it.
Well, there's one about appointing a QS and when.
Cool.
Okay. Do you want to screen
share? Oh, I'm not sharing screen, am I? That'll help.
I was just going to get it up myself. So this question is from Dilly Raz. It's really cool for me. I'd like to hear more about the day-to-day management of HMOs, common issues and solutions. So yeah, as I said last week to myself and a lobby full of hotel people and a woman hoovering, we try and use as much tech as possible. So we use Coho, Good Lord, PayProp, so Coho is a management software, so specifically a management software. They're actually trying to see if they can commandeer and be the new spare room in the market as well, which is quite cool and hot on the market. So yeah, we love Coho. Van is a good friend of all of ours, really, mine, Ben's and Rob's, and it's a really good product. We use Good Lord for referencing. We use PayProp for payment management. And then we typically do our own quarterly inspections, which is really important. We use Monday.com as a project management tool, and as well as other things. It's super powerful, Monday.com, and the team absolutely love it. As far as the day-to-day management goes, a good rule of thumb is they say about 100 doors should occupy one person. That person will need managing, and we need to be on the right systems and processes. If you are looking to build your own HMO management team, a lettings agent is a really good place to start as a hire, but you may want to self-manage for the time being until you can offset that cost to make it worthwhile. The next question is maybe video of the state of the HMOs after tenants leave and the average length of the stays and cost to prepare for the next tenant. So we lodge our deposits via the deposit scheme. We don't really have major issues other than light wear and tear and decorating that typically needs to be done. I actually believe when tenants take good care of a property, a really good clean is often enough, which sort of shows the quality of the tenants that we do typically get. We obviously have had some horror stories where we typically go for the deposit. It normally doesn't cut the mustard, but we typically turn rooms around in a few days to relet, so not bad at all. And then question number 3 is the average running cost of HMOs. So rattling through it, we typically budget for gas and heating £25 per bed per month, electric £25 per bed per month, water £12 per bed per month, broadband £50 per house per calendar month, TV licensing £5 per house per calendar month, EICRs and gas safeties per year, we budget £22 per calendar month. Insurance, typically £12 per bed per month. That is a difficult one because if it's a listed building, it's double the price. If it's in a flood area, it might be double the price, but that's just a budget. Windows and external cleaning, we budget £50 per calendar month, and cleaning, we budget £75 per calendar month up to 6 beds, and then we increase it accordingly. Hopefully that was useful. Next question, Ben.
Nice.
What is in with the red book framework that leads to a more conservative end value? Is it simply the valuers adopt a more pessimistic view on the premium for new units, other than it seems broadly on how a developer would value the scheme, i.e. lower comparable X factors, higher factor? So, I mean, long and short, a red book valuer will be typically the most conservative in the market. Whether it's new or used, it doesn't really matter. It's their PI that's going to be unlocked if they have overvalued something or got something wrong. So they are typically protecting their downside or suability. I actually spoke to a surveyor today, and he said, look, I've got a plan for it wasn't a valuation surveyor, it was actually a building surveyor, but he said, I've got to prepare for the worst and advise the client of the worst. This is a house we're selling, because I've got to cover myself. And I thought to myself, yeah, well, if we all walked out the door in the morning preparing for the worst, it wouldn't be a great world to live in, would it? But that's surveyors and valuers. So yeah, they're just typically pessimistic. Next one, Ben. So can we discuss about loan, what types should be used and what kind of rates are available now? I just said in the last week's episode, which you obviously didn't hear, Sonny, is hopefully I've answered all of these questions in the episode. So hopefully for you, it was before the 40th minute. And if it isn't, check out our Spotify account and I will re-record it in the very near future. Next, I think this next one might be... No, this was me again. Would development deals sourcing be a good service-based business? And my response was a bit controversial, and I said it isn't. And the reason being is development deals are difficult to get over the line. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot that goes into conveyancing. There's a lot that goes into putting money into the deals. There's a lot that goes into the debt. And if I was building a service-based business, I would want slightly easier wins. And a phrase that our favorite man, James Sinclair, says is little and often, which is a great service-based business. So smaller fees, but much more frequent, and that keeps the lights on. And that way you will build a more sustainable, reliable service-based business. But then the development deals is kind of, even if you're a development deal sourcer, is kind of the whale hunting. If you look at any land and new homes team that sell development deals, they've also got 100 people that are doing lettings every day. They've also got 50 people in sales, negotiating sales every day. So the big development deals are difficult to get over the line, and that's not a very good way of little and often income to build a scalable, sustainable business. Another example is a chartered surveying company in Reading. They do valuations, they do monitoring surveying, they do building reports, they do floor plans, all of that little easy stuff that they can win business, little fees, £200 to £300 to £1,000 to 2K report. That's all coming in every week. They also sell large sites, like a £10 million sale, but that might happen once a quarter. So for Jace, I would recommend you look at easier wins, little and often income, something that's scalable and sustainable, and something you can rely on that then takes you away from the day-to-day management to harpoon the big whales.
I'd say one of the benefits of it being a deal sourcing service-based business is that it does feed into your wider picture, which is the development and investment stuff. So if you're deal sourcing, you might find that you get opportunities that you can buy yourself because they're the cream of the crop. So you're seeing that before maybe anybody else sees it. But I agree with Jack. I don't think it's a great service-based business to be running alongside your property development stuff. Just because Jace is such a loyal fan and asks loads of great questions, I'll throw this one up that he's asked live now. Does a site need to work on the lowest agent valuation you receive? I got some valuations from a site once at 2.7 million, another at 3.3 million, and a couple at around the 3 million mark, including where I landed. No, you don't. I mean, ultimately, you have to use your own experience, your expertise, data scrape from wherever you can scrape it from. Agent valuations are useful, but fundamentally, you need to pitch things where you think is accurate, and that would be my advice. Cool, Andrew. Again, thank you very much.
This one's for you, I think.
Yeah, at what stage would you instruct a QS to check if your build cost assumptions were correct? Would this be after offer accepted but pre-exchange? Yes, I would definitely bring in a QS after, like Jack says all the time, like get things under contract. You don't want to be spending too much time and too much money, before getting your offer out the door. There's things that can come up, after you've got the contract on your desk, where you could potentially chip the price, or you find issues with the property that means you can, give yourself a bit more of a buffer in terms of getting it at a lower price than what was originally agreed, for example. But you want to get security with it. You want to get that offer accepted and move things on. But as soon as you do get that offer accepted, you want to then be the ones, starting to de-risk the property. And the more money you spend after that process, the lower your risk profile, because you're finding out answers by spending a bit of money on the design, spending a little bit of money on a quantity surveyor to regularize your costs and check your cost assumptions. Maybe generate some planning reports that solidifies some of the thought processes that you had in terms of, yes, this is permitted development. Yes, this does have a good chance of planning success. But before you get your offer out and your offer accepted, you don't necessarily want to be spending a shitload of money on loads of external reports to not even win the work, and it's a waste of time and money. So yes, certainly as soon as you get your offer accepted, I would absolutely be getting somebody in to sort of sense check from a QS perspective your build cost assumptions. Cool. This was in a response to one of our shorts pulled from our long form podcast, and it was about what you guys want to know more about when we do these podcasts, when we do our videos, when we do our video tours, when we do our podcast. What do you want to know about what's going on? And Raja has said, fly on the wall videos of your team meetings, how you manage your team stroke stakeholders and hold them to account. And that is brilliant. So we've got some more footage coming out soon. Every month now, all of our team in the senior team are going to be on a video tour, a site tour walk around. And Todd, our videographer, is going to be following us around on those things. So, there will be some content coming out where you can see conversations that we're having both with external stakeholders, like I met the structural engineer and the fabricator on site of one of our projects last month. There's lots of interesting conversations that were happening back and forth on that. And yeah, we'll try and get some more kind of behind the scenes type stuff that you can understand how Jack and I operate in terms of holding the team to account, all the stuff that goes on in the background that you guys don't necessarily see, and hopefully that will be really useful for you. So yeah, great question, great suggestion, and we'll try to bring that to you. Cool. I think we should probably wrap up there, unless there's anything else you want to say, Jack.
No, all good.
Cool, good stuff. Well, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Do like, share, do all that good stuff, and we will hopefully see you again next week, Friday at 4:30. So subscribe, comment, like, and have a good weekend.
Bye.
Later.